Miami's center position seems a little thin, but can Nikola Jovic be the best solution? We dive into the possibility and how Jovic could reach his potential on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day for daily content on the Heat. Join more than 17,000 Heat fans and click that subscribe button on YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Have a great show for you today. We're going to talk about where the Heat's front court ranks versus some of the other front courts in the East in a second. But I wanted to start with a question, David, that I've been thinking about quite a bit this offseason, which is, can Nikola Jovic be Miami's Naz Reid? And what do I mean by that? You take a look at what Minnesota has done the last couple of seasons in their front court rotation. Whether it was Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns or Rudy Gobert and Julius Randle last year, with Naz Reid coming off the bench, Naz Reid always in the mix for Sixth Man of the Year. They basically just played three front court players at all times. And for the most part, they're interchangeable. But, Chris Finch, the Timberwolves head coach, basically he starts with Gobert and last year Randle, and the year before that it was Towns. But he goes Gobert, Randle, and then Naz Reid comes in pretty early and will supplant either Gobert or Randle. And if he's coming in for Randle, Naz Reid will play with Rudy Gobert. And if he's playing with Randle, Naz Reid will slot in at the 5 in place of Rudy Gobert. So Reid can kind of play the 4 or the 5. But you go back like a couple years ago where it was Towns, and it was always either Gobert or Towns, with Reid kind of playing as a power forward off of them. And that's maybe that's more of how I envision Nico, because I don't envision Nico as a 5. Maybe in small ball situations, in certain matchups, but not really like in a standard rotation. And for Miami, go ahead.
No. I was gonna say, Nico has the size here, so it's just, what is it that keeps him from ever really truly developing as as a big for Miami? Because I know he's been kind of shoehorned into that spot, and yet when you compare him to a player like Reid, he's clearly, he's larger than Naz Reid is. Is it just a matter of bulk? Is it a matter of strength? Is it just the way that his career up to this point has been played out? He's been mostly a ball handler, and I think that's where he's flourished the most. But it seems like for him to really grow in the NBA, it seems it's going to have to be at either front court position.
Well, he's just not a good rebounder, and he's not stout enough defensively. Fair. So he's not really a 5. I know that the Heat have experimented with him at the 5, like at the G League level and stuff. Yeah. I think that was more of just throwing him into the deep end and hoping that he would just become more physical without the plan actually ever being, you might be playing center in the G League where there basically aren't any 7-footers. Like, people don't realize how small the G League is. Versus in the NBA, you're basically be a power forward. But in Miami, as long as Bam and Ware, as long as they're on the roster, you don't really need Nico to play the 5. But I think he could play the 4, and that's his position. But for him, he's not a great rebounder. He's not a rim protector. And those are kind of the two things you got to be if you're going to be a starting level center or even a rotation center in the NBA. So I just think his skill set is more of a forward than a center. And I think that's fine. If you're an oversized forward, I think and he's oversized only in height. Like, he's not that big,
But Naz isn't a shot blocker either. He's not a rim protector.
That's fair. And that's why that's kind of why I pointed out they were better when they had Cat and Gobert at the 5 spot, with Reid always kind of playing the 4. I think that's the better Naz Reid angle. Okay. It doesn't always seem great when it's Naz Reid and Julius Randle in there for Minnesota, but so I'm kind of thinking more about like 2 years ago, the way that Miami's roster is set up now. So I guess, like Naz Reid, if we're going to look for ways in which they're similar, he spaces the floor, right? Jovic and Reid both shot 37%, are both 37% shooters for their career from 3-point range. Like Reid, he needs to be next to a rebounder, like we were talking about. Like Naz Reid's not a great rebounder, and he's a little bit better than Jovic, but Jovic averages about 4 rebounds per game. He just needs to be next to a real rebounder, whether it's Ware, who obviously needs to improve there, or Bam, who's an elite rebounder. When you look at the team rebounding numbers part of it. But I guess I guess maybe the more interesting part of this, Reid obviously has a very high usage rate when he's out there on the court for Minnesota. They run offense through him. They run a lot of offense to him. And that doesn't really seem to be the case with Nico all the time.
No.
But I guess if it were to work out, like, can the Heat treat Jovic the same way that Minnesota treats Naz Reid?
I don't see why not. It doesn't seem like there's an element to Nico's game that I think is missing in Reid's, and that's his ability as a playmaker. And I think that's kind of where they don't necessarily function to the same degree. I mean, you look at Reid's assist numbers there, they seem pretty comparable to Jovic, and yet I think, I don't know, maybe Jovic just hasn't had the opportunity or had really the minutes. I don't know. Those statistics kind of show otherwise, right? It's interesting then. I guess it's just in my head, without the statistical analysis to back it up, my idea of Jovic is that he's a playmaking big. And I think that's where he would flourish the most. But you look at him and compare it to what we saw from Naz Reid, and maybe they could pattern his game to be similar to that, as a offensive-minded center that can kind of tilt things in Miami's favor coming off the bench, or being a versatile option in conjunction with either Bam or Ware. Do you see him flourishing more alongside Ware then in this scenario, or alongside Bam?
Either one, right?
Either one.
I think his role would be to just play alongside one of them at all times, to never be on the court without one of them, which is essentially how Reid operates. And that's like what you're looking for in lineups. And we'll touch on lineups here in a second, but you just want to accentuate the strengths of your players. You want to find the right combinations where their strengths are highlighted and their weaknesses are mitigated. But I guess with Nico, and this is less of like, can he be Naz Reid? And it's more of, can he be whatever version of Miami's Naz Reid there is? Can Nico be that guy? And I think you hit it on the head when you said, can he just be a guy who comes off the bench and is a spark on offense, who tilts things in a different way, and just kind of creates a different tempo for Miami? And I think when Nico is at his best, and we talked about this last year, when he was sort of the sixth man coming off the bench, when Miami did eventually move to the Ware Bam lineup, that's what he was. And you and I talked about him after the All-Star break potentially being the most important Heat player on the team, because it just felt like every time he was getting to his game and the Heat were able to kind of play that way for a few minutes here and there, everything just elevated. And he is such a unique offensive talent for an offense that was, again, in the bottom 10 in offensive rating last year. The more you can empower those kinds of guys, I think the better.
Absolutely. I think for a guy like Nico, Miami's, I think their ceiling can get so much higher with a player like him reaching his potential, because he has that versatility, because of there's so many things that you can do with a player like him. His passing is certainly great. I think his perimeter shooting can continue to improve, but it's such a great weapon to have at that front court position. And there's so many more things that you can do with a player like him, pushing that tempo, getting them to initiate a fast break offense. For a team that really struggles with fast break opportunities, it seems like Nico might be one of their best fast break options. He's a great finisher in that regard. He's very skilled. There's a lot of things you could do with him, and it's almost a shame because you never really get to see him be that kind of player consistently throughout the course of the season. And I think that's what we're still waiting on. Whose fault
do you think that is? Like, if we had to do a blame pie?
No one's, because it's really injury. I think, look, you follow what happened last year. Like, he struggled to start. He was the starter because it was a great option for him to play alongside Bam and Adebayo. Kel'el wasn't ready to start. You had to put somebody in there alongside Bam. Jimmy was still in the starting lineup, etc. You needed that option, that versatility, and we both thought that was going to work out great, that this could be a big cog in unlocking Miami's offense, and he struggled. Now, I don't think that he struggled because it was the wrong fit for him. I think he put a lot of pressure on himself. At least that was my thinking in terms of what, seeing him and watching him play, it seemed like every missed shot weighed even exponentially more than it could have on him. And it seemed like he got more and more in his head. And then with his defensive issues, with his just inability to finish at a high level, it just seemed like he wasn't quite the player that he should have been. And then he got hurt and he was taken out of the lineup and he was just kind of out of the rotation virtually. And then he started playing more. And once he did, he was flourishing in that role. And that's when he was playing the best basketball, arguably, of his career. And I think that's kind of what you see from him. So I don't know that there's been any one obstacle to him unlocking his potential other than some unfortunate health. Yeah.
And remember, he had the foot injury, the ankle injury last summer, right? When he was training overseas, he had that injury and then he came back. And it felt like it kind of set him behind a little bit from the very beginning. And I think that played a factor as well.
I just think that Spo wants him to be more of a heavier rotational player, but I think there's just concerns about what he can do defensively, and he has to be able to maximize his time out there. Because if you're not producing offensively and you're not producing defensively, you're not the kind of stopper that you expect him to. And look, I think he's not a great defender, but I think he's gotten better over the course of his career.
Definitely, and he's had flashes of being just downright impactful defensively, whether it was switching onto smaller guards on the perimeter and holding his own, or the occasional weak side block or contest or something like that. For him, it's the consistency part of it always, whether it's the shooting, the rebounding, or the defense. It's the consistency, and that's the thing that Eric Spoelstra was talking about with us in Vegas, about how he's just been blown away with what he's seen from Nico lately. So you just hope that we start seeing some of that stuff unfold on the court. Now, we got a little bit more to carve into here. What's the best use of Nico in Miami's system? Does that mean starting or coming off the bench? What position is Nikola Jovic? And why a new addition might be the ideal player for him to play with? We'll talk about all of that next here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing. And whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. You wouldn't be listening to this podcast otherwise. So why not make it a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are still getting sunburned at the beach. FanDuel is really easy to use. It's fast to pay out, and it makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. And whether you're placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet right into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like you're a part of the action. And if you're new to FanDuel, well, guess what? This is the best time to join. New customers can bet just $5 and you get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. So open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to get started. We'll be right back.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I might have been better off asking this a little bit earlier, David, but is Nikola Jovic even a power forward? Because I think there's a debate among Heat fans about whether or not he's a power forward or a small forward or a point guard or a center or whatever he is. I tend to think the hell with your positions, play him at power forward, and if he's bringing the ball up as a point forward, that's fine. We don't have to make him the quote-unquote point guard. I don't think that actually has any significance whatsoever. And defensively, he's definitely not guarding point guards. So you got to have some guard. You have to have smaller guards out there anyway when he's out there on the court. It's not like you're literally going to play Nico out there at 6'10", 6'11", with a bunch of other 6'7", 6'8", 6'9", 6'10", 7-foot guys. So I tend to think that his best position is power forward because that's actually how you maximize his versatility to the point where it's an actual advantage, because most players his size don't have the ball skills that he has.
Yeah, I think so. I think the 3 or 4, honestly. I think he could fill either position pretty well there. But I guess it all depends on what players you'd have surrounding him. I don't know if you want to jump into that option right now, but for a guy like him, again, you're looking specifically at what his strengths are: 3-point shooting, ball handling, pushing pace, etc. So more of an offensive player, certainly. But then you need somebody who's more of a defensive anchor playing alongside him. Bam, Ware, I guess if you want to look at him that way. So if you are looking at the right lineup combination to maximize what Nico can do, it might be playing him at the 3. I still think that's a good option. If you have him at the 3 alongside Bam,
starting
Ware, potentially. I mean, and maybe it's just something consider if Wiggins is traded or something along those lines. But I don't know. I don't know if that's the right move. It might be. What if it was a combination of Davion Mitchell and either Hero or Powell in that starting backcourt then, and then you have Nico alongside too? Is that the best lineup? Would it be Hero and Powell?
It's an interesting lineup.
Yeah. Because I think that's where you'll have their best balance. Now, that's not to say that has to be your starting lineup. It could be not necessarily a closing lineup either, but maybe something that gets inserted at some point where you have that combination of players there. Because I think that brings a good balance in what you're looking for.
I think the main point there is that you have to play him next to a rim protector. You don't want to go so small that Nico's your 5. Now, whether he's your 4 or your 3, whatever, I think he's best at the 4. I'd rather put more shooting out there on the floor, whatever. And I think, by the way, I think Miami's deep enough 1 through 3 that you don't really have to play Nico there. Mm-hmm. And if Miami's shallow anywhere, it's at those big man spots. Like, I like Bam, I like Ware, I like Nico. There's not much after that I like on the roster. So you kind of have to split up those 40, well, it's more than 48 minutes. It's what's 48 times 2? 96?
Yeah.
You have 96 minutes at the 4 and the 5 that you got to fill. I don't know that you can afford to play Nico anywhere other than power forward. Because, like, if you do, then how are you filling in those other minutes in those other spots throughout the game? So that would be my one concern there, unless you're going from really big to really small with somebody like Jaime or Haywood at the 4 and other minutes. And maybe that's a strategy that Spo goes to. But generally speaking, the idea of who you play Nico with, to me, is interesting. Because if you're looking at what's Miami's best use of Nico in their system, regardless of the position, again, unimportant to me, it's who he's playing with and how you're maximizing his skills. I think Nico is interesting enough as a player, and we're in year 4 of this now, where we got to figure out, is this guy a core piece or not? Not just because he's going to be a restricted free agent next summer, but also a really big deal is that he's going to be a restricted free agent next summer. Like, you got to figure this out as long as he doesn't sign an extension before this upcoming season. So to me, I want him handling the ball. I want him, but not all the time, because I also want him to help space. I want him to help space next to guys like Bam and Ware and create if he's in the corner, create openings in the middle for them. I love when they get to that high-low action with Nico and Ware or Nico and Bam. To me, that's really fun and really interesting and a mismatch nightmare for a lot of teams. So leaning into all those things that he can do and playing fast, obviously, also. So right. I want him playing with a big man. I also want him playing with guys who will allow him to handle the ball quite a bit and cut off of the ball. And if I think about Miami's best cutters, I'm thinking Yakachonis, who's already a very advanced cutter as a rookie. Kel'el Larson, who's obviously an awesome cutter. And Jaime Jaquez Jr., who just all he does is eat up space.
Yeah.
And I want Nico playing with those guys a lot.
So let's assume then your starting lineup is, as we've talked before, Hero, Powell, Wiggins, Bam, Ware.
Mm-hmm.
Then you take out Bam early on as his normal substitution pattern. Nico comes in there ostensibly at the 4 to play alongside Ware. You leave Wiggins in there, maybe bring in Davion Mitchell for either Hero or Powell. And then that's your kind of combination right there. It's Mitchell plus other scoring guard. Wiggins still in there, but eventually Wiggins comes out. Then you bring Jaime in there for a little balance, or Pella. Pella could come in there as a 2-3 also. So that's your balance there. Again, by that point, you can take Ware out as well. Nico can play extended minutes if he's out of foul trouble, and then you can put Bam in there. It seems like that's a good way of kind of blending those minutes, getting the right mix of players out there, and still, you know what, Miami just they have depth. It all has to work in a way that it hasn't up to this point, because you don't have that superstar talent. So you're trying to depend too much on your depth, and unfortunately Miami's depth, with the exception perhaps of Nico, is just hasn't reached their full potential yet. They haven't done anything where they excel and bring some kind of punch to this team. And you have to be able to play these combinations in order to find an effective blend of players.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder if this could be the year where we finally see that pop, because to me, you have all of this glut of players and none of them really are great. And yet I still in my head I keep envisioning this group, and it just seems like you have so many different options. You do have a lot of different
This is
players
the
you can bring in
deepest
for
Heat
different
team
opportunities.
they've had in a really long time. It doesn't have the Jimmy Butler piece at the top, but I
That's
can't
what it
recall.
is, so.
I'm looking at this rotation. I got 11 guys, maybe 12, who I would like to see play every single night. And that's hard to do. Now, we saw teams like Cleveland and Golden State do that early in the season. And Golden State ended up making a consolidation trade, obviously. We remember that one. Cleveland ended up whittling down their rotation quite a bit, but that was not an easy decision for them to do.
Yeah.
But I think Miami could be right there playing. Like, why not? Play 11 or 12 guys. I think you're seeing in today's NBA, depth really counts, especially in the regular season where you're trying to stay as fresh as possible. That stuff really does result in more wins, right? Especially when we're talking about back-to-backs and long road trips and stuff like that. Keeping guys fresh and letting guys like Nico just maybe he's not playing 30 minutes a night. Maybe he's playing 22. But because of how deep the roster is, when he's out there for those 22 minutes, he's going hard, right? Like he's just leaving it all out there for 22 minutes, and then he's coming off and somebody else is going in there and playing really hard for 8 straight minutes. And that's sort of how you're dealing with your rotation. And that's how your offense gets better and more decisive, and the ball movement's better. It's how your defense gets better because you have more energy and all those things. But yeah, I think they're really deep. I think they are. I think they're actually starting to be really actually versatile and not just talking about being versatile. Like there might actually be real versatility on this roster for the first time in a long time. But let's move on. The Heat's front court might be an underrated strength next season. We're going to talk about where it ranks among the best in the East after this. So, David, in the NFL, we talk a lot about like the room, right? You have the quarterback room, the running back room, the defensive back room, the linebacker room. And I kind of want to apply that to basketball here and just talk about Miami's front court in terms of like a front court room. And to me, the 3 guys in that room are Bam, Kel'el, and Nico.
Sure.
And Vlad Golden when he's not in Sioux Falls, I suppose. I guess he's in there too. And that's really it, right? Like, Kashad Johnson maybe is part of that room. But in terms of the guys that we think are playing every single night, it's Kel'el, it's Bam, it's Nico. That's the room. That's your 3-man front court rotation. So I was thinking about, okay, well, I kind of like all 3 of those guys. Where do they rank in the Eastern Conference as a 3-man front court rotation? If they end up doing the thing that we've been talking about in terms of, hey, you're probably starting Bam and Ware. Nico's coming off. He's playing with Bam or Ware, or really however you're doing it. But those guys are all sort of playing together, mixing and matching in different lineups. Where does that 3-man front court rotation rank in the East? So I'm going to just list you a few of the top ones that I was thinking about. So you got Miami, Bam, Ware, Jovic. Cleveland, we got to talk about them. Evan Mobley, Jared Allen. I guess the third guy would be Dean Wade.
Yeah.
The Knicks with Towns, Mitchell Robinson, and OG Anunoby. And this is not in any particular order. Milwaukee.
Yeah.
You're thinking Giannis, now Miles Turner, Bobby Portis. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Maybe Kuzma is a factor in there also, depending on where they're going to play him. Orlando, I'm thinking you got Wendell Carter Jr., Paolo Banchero, Jonathan Isaac. I think would be the top 3, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you go Mo Wagner over Isaac, maybe? Detroit, I'm going Jalen Duren, Tobias Harris, Isaiah Stewart. That one's pretty good too.
Yeah.
But I look at Miami's, and I think that's right there at the top of the ones that we were talking about. What do you think?
Philadelphia?
Or near the top, I should say.
I mean,
Philly with
assuming Embiid's
Embiid,
healthy.
and that's it, right?
Under Drummond?
Okay. Like, they don't have a power forward on the roster. So I didn't really know what to do with them.
Paul George? He's your power forward.
That's your power forward when he's healthy. He's hurt again. He just had another surgery. I don't know who I have no idea who's playing power forward for Philly. So I looked at it. I really did. I was like, this is too confusing.
So 8th maybe in the East? 7th, 8th?
You think Miami's front court is 7th or 8th?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're looking at here.
So you put them behind all of them?
All those teams that we just listed?
Yeah. Just the front court rotation, not the team, not in the standings.
Cleveland, Milwaukee,
You have those as better front court rotations than what Miami has.
and Orlando, I think, are better.
Really?
Maybe Detroit as well. Yeah, I would say so. I mean, Paolo Banchero kind of tips the edge in Orlando's favor. I mean,
yeah.
Wendell
So
Carter Jr.
Paolo's
is
better
pretty
than
solid.
Bam. I guess you would still consider Wendell Carter. Yeah, you're probably right. Milwaukee has to be the top just because they have Giannis, and I like Miles Turner, but like
I
Giannis,
don't know about that. I mean, over Cleveland, I mean, maybe their third option if it's Wade is not the best, but I mean, Allen and Mobley are two all-star level players.
that's fair. So like Milwaukee / Cleveland,
New
at
York,
the top. I guess you'd have New York. Although with New York, you have injury questions with Anunoby and Mitchell Robinson.
okay.
And if one of those guys are out, Towns just such a defensive liability.
Yeah.
That it becomes a real issue. So I kind of think Miami is closer to the Knicks. I think that's
What
better
about
than
Detroit?
Detroit. I think it's better than
Is
Detroit.
it? Duran and Harris.
You have Bam.
Stewart. Beef stew.
Bam. You have Bam. Forget it. Like those guys, none of those guys even come close to Bam.
No.
So yeah, I think that's right. I think it's like Milwaukee and Cleveland at the top somewhere in whatever order.
Yeah.
And then it's probably like Miami, New York, and Orlando in a tier below those guys.
That's fair.
And
Yeah,
that's
a lot of it depends on where though. Like I mean,
yep.
right now to me, he's even still after what we saw from him last year, and there were bright spots, obviously, but he has to become more of a legitimate force, more like what we saw in the last couple of games that he played in Las Vegas, rather than the first couple of games that he played in Summer League. So I think if he can be that consistent and be a presence down low, continue to be able to be an effective vertical threat, the occasional 3-point shot, certainly a higher level of defense, solid rebounding numbers. Because I don't think he'll ever be I don't know. He could have the potential to be a decent rebounder, but I mean, I just
He
put up
should
some
be.
basic numbers.
With
He
that
should
size,
be.
with that size and catch radius, he should be a 10 rebounder guy, a night guy.
Yeah, I know.
But we don't know if he will be. To your point,
No. So if he can become that in the best version of in year two, if he can have that same level of engagement and motivation that we saw from him during the second half of Vegas, I think that bodes well for what he can bring to the table. And then between him and Bam, that might be closer to Cleveland than it would be to, say, Orlando or New York.
right? Because we know what Bam can do, and he needs to have another big year. He needs to have somewhat of a bounce back year here too.
No
But
doubt.
also Nico, like the guy played 46 games the last 2 years, 15 games. Like he needs to be out there. Like availability is the most important ability, right? Like he needs to be out there. And so if he's out there, it creates that flexibility that we've been talking about. And if he's not available, even if you have a big second year leap from Kel'el and a bounce back year from Bam, who's the other guy in that room? You end up in a Caleb Martin situation all over again, where it's like, Haywood, I'm sorry, you got to guard fours. Jaime, I'm sorry, you got to guard fours. Kashad, I'm sorry, you have to play. Like it gets really thin really quick if Nico's not available or effective, and that would be maybe the part that I'm worried about. But it's why I think Nico has to have a really big year too.
We talked about Vlad Golden last week, but even as the team draws near to training camp, do you think they look at any other available centers and try to fill the position that way, just to bring in a fourth body that kind of might be a little more legitimate sized player and not necessarily somebody like Golden who might not be ready? I think there's the cost to consider, and unfortunately that is the nature of the basketball side of things, is that you can keep a player like Golden, he's significantly cheaper than bringing in a veteran minimum contract. But if you were Miami, do you think that maybe adding another name on there, regardless of who that name might be a better option than having to rely on Golden and whoever's left on the roster?
I'm on the record saying you need another body out there. I mean, I think it's crazy that they're going into this season, or at least it looks like they're going into the season without another veteran big
center,
somewhere, center, forward, just a body, somebody who's 6'9",
6'8",
6'10". It's just Throw somebody out there with actual NBA experience, and doesn't have to, not a part of your rotation, a break glass in case, essentially to replace Kevin Love. I mean, that's what we're really talking about.
Yes, exactly.
And not a guy who's going to be part of your every night rotation, but just a guy that you needed. Every team needs those guys. To me, it's crazy that they don't have them, but maybe they really think that highly of Golden, or maybe they have an idea of, hey, well, we're going to make some sort of roster payroll cutting move here pretty soon before the season starts, and at that point, maybe we'll just go out and grab a guy or whatever it is. But I'm on record saying they need to add somebody, but I have no indication that they are going to do that. So we'll see. So yeah, I thought that was fun. Nikola Jovic, big year, hopefully coming for him, and some interesting lineups that can come from it. That'll do it for us today. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen today. For your second listen, find the Locked On NBA podcast so there is no offseason. Doug Batten Hayes keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to be the most informed NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. In case you missed it, our first episode this week, we broke down which players in the Miami Heat might crack the Locked On Podcast Network's top 100 rankings. You're not going to want to miss that episode. It went up a little bit later on Monday afternoon, a little bit later than we usually like to get these episodes out, so you might have missed it. So check that out over there, plus our news episode on a couple of players that the Heat added to the roster. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.